I was born 1961. I'm computer engineer from Rothenburg, Germany. I killed a man, slaughtered him and ate him. Since then, he is always with me.
What's up, friends? It's me. Welcome back for another Twisted Tea video. First, an interesting thought that never really crossed my mind before researching this case is that all laws have an origin story. Law itself has evolved with the development of civilizations. At one point, what we consider to be crimes today were never even conceived. It isn't until it comes up that there's a need for a law. Buckle up, this case is intense. So, Armin Meiwes was born on December 1st of 1961 in Essen in West Germany. When his parents met, his mom was 40 years old and his dad was only 21. Armin had two older brothers from his mom's previous marriage, and it's said that his mother got pregnant with him as a way to keep her husband around, rather than out of love. His dad was a police officer, and when Armin was 3, his dad bought the family a 16,000 square foot mansion with 36 rooms in a small village that only had around 25 residents. From the outside looking in, they seem to have the perfect family, but things aren't always as they seem. Armin's parents fought a lot, and there was a very toxic vibe inside the house. In September of 1970, when Armin was only 7 years old, his dad bailed, leaving Armin and his mom behind. Armin was playing in the front yard with a friend when he heard the front door slam. His father stormed out, got in the car, and Armin never saw him again. He says that his mother didn't really do much but yell at him, and she never showed him any affection. Armin did all of the shopping, cooking, and cleaning for the house. He started to read books as a way to escape from his reality and pretend to be in someone else's. When he was 10, he read a book called Robinson Crusoe that talks about cannibalism, and he became fixated on the idea of eating another person. Armin had experienced a lot of loss in his short life thus far. His older brothers left home, and then his father, and then he was alienated by his mother. What fascinated him the most about consuming another person was the idea that he could keep them close to him. They would permanently be with him. When he was 19, Armin Meiwes left home and joined the German army. According to Meiwes, this was the first time in his life that he had any control over himself or any power over others. He said that this kept his temptations at bay and gave him a sense of normalcy. While in the army, Armin didn't have much luck with women and found himself friend-zoned most of the time. He started to question his sexuality. One of Armin's closest friends said that Armin asked him if he thought that he was gay, and the friend told him, "Dude, you have to know that for yourself. That's not something I can answer for you." But the friend did tell the interviewer that he always assumed that Armin was gay. Armin had gotten into an accident one night in 1993 when he was drunk driving, and after 12 years in the army, he was kicked out as a result of his disorderly conduct. So, when he was 32 years old, Armin Meiwes moved back home to take care of his aging mother and started working as a computer technician for a company that serviced banks. In the 1990s, the world was evolving, and the World Wide Web was becoming more accessible to the general public every day. Armin would finally have his chance to connect with like-minded individuals. He started a website that he cleverly named the Cannibal Cafe, where he uploaded staged pictures of animal meat that he had cut to resemble human body parts, and photoshopped pictures of young men to show as before pictures. His work was very convincing, and he started to get correspondence from people who wanted to partake in his shenanigans. Then on September 2nd of 1999, Armin returned home from work to find his mom still laying in bed after suffering from a massive heart attack. Armin saw this as his green light. He would finally have total freedom. By November of that same year, there was zero evidence of his mother left in the house. He started posting advertisements on various websites, including his own, looking for volunteers. He was looking for a, quote, handsome young man between 18 and 25 years old. They had to be pleasant and physically appealing, but not too muscular, as he thought this would taint the flavor. When he didn't get any hits from his preferred age group, he raised the age to 30 years old, and someone finally reached out. Jorg Bozer seemed fully willing to sacrifice himself for Meiwes' fantasy, but quickly changed his mind. For Armin Meiwes, the fantasy didn't work unless the victim was consenting, so he started to look for another volunteer. He posted pictures of himself holding the knives that he planned to use, and even went as far as making papier-mâché heads to smash trying to get clicks. Then on February 14th of 2001, 42-year-old Bernd Brandes reached out to Meiwes, offering himself as a potential victim, and started a dialogue about what should happen to his remains afterwards. Brandes even offered his skull as an ashtray. He titled his email Dinner and wrote, quote, "I offer myself to be eaten alive, no slaughter, just eaten," end quote. Brandes had his own twisted fantasy. He longed to cut off his own penis. He didn't care what would happen afterward. He just really had an urge to cut it off. On March 9, 2001, Bernd Brandes and Armin Meiwes finally met in person. Brandes lied to his partner and told him that he was going on a business trip and deleted the email correspondence between himself and Meiwes, and then bought a one-way ticket from Berlin to Kassel where Meiwes would be waiting to pick him up. They went back to Armin Meiwes' house. Armin went into the kitchen to make them some coffee, and when he came back to the living room where Brandes was, he found him stripped completely naked. According to Meiwes, Brandes said, quote, "I want you to admire your dinner," end quote. Brandes drank half of a bottle of cough medicine and told Meiwes that once he was asleep, he could castrate him. But before he fell asleep, he too changed his mind. The two men hopped back in the car, and Meiwes headed toward Berlin to take Brandes home. But the fear of telling his partner where he had been scared Brandes into changing his mind back. And this conversation was captured on video. In the video, Brandes tells Meiwes that he wants to be completely unconscious, and then they can go forward with their plans. They bought more cold medicine and sleeping pills, and then Meiwes castrated Brandes. Both men wanted to eat the severed penis, but were unable because it was too chewy, so Meiwes went to the kitchen and fried it up. But it didn't taste like they expected it to. According to Meiwes, Brandes asked him to put him into a warm bath, and he did. Then Meiwes sat next to him in the bathroom reading a Star Wars novel, while the two men waited for Bernd Brandes to die. After about 2 hours, Brandes tried to get out of the bathtub and passed out on the floor in the bathroom, so Meiwes carried him to the bedroom and tucked him in. The two men agreed that if Bernd Brandes was still alive in the morning, they would feast on his genitalia, but by 5 a.m. he was dead. Meiwes went through with dismembering the body, like he had seen butchers do so many times, and crushed the bones to get rid of them, minus the skull, which he did keep as an ashtray. He recorded the entire process, and according to Meiwes, Brandes was chewier than he expected, so he ended up grinding up the meat to make meatballs for easier consumption. Over the next year, Meiwes consumed 45 pounds of Bernd Brandes' body. Armin Meiwes finally carried out his lifelong fantasy, but the urge was starting to come back, and by June of the following year, he was back on the internet advertising for his second volunteer. On July 8, 2002, a 23-year-old med student stumbled across the bizarre advertisements while surfing the web. He was appalled and wanted to reach out to Meiwes to pick his brain and see if the advertisements were legit. Armin Meiwes thought that this man was going to offer himself as a volunteer, so he offered details about what he had done to Bernd Brandes and what he wanted to do again. But this man actually intended to contact authorities. On November 28, 2002, a warrant was issued for Armin Meiwes' residence and stables. Samples were seized from his freezers. Armin Meiwes was arrested and brought in for questioning, but he was released pending the test results from the meat that had been confiscated. Meiwes was interested in a woman, but wanted to be upfront and honest with her before pursuing the relationship, so he went to a lawyer and confessed his crimes, and asked for the best way to get out of the situation. Meiwes and his lawyer then went to a judge, and the judge told him to go home and wait for the police. Meiwes never denied killing Brandes, and also admitted that he knew it was wrong, but he was adamant that this wouldn't have happened if Brandes didn't want to be killed. He said that he was never interested in the amputation of the penis or consuming it. He only agreed to do that first because he wanted Brandes to be able to live out his fantasy in the process. The video of the conversation between Meiwes and Brandes was given to police to corroborate his story, proving that he had consent for the entire ordeal, from amputating the penis to using his skull as an ashtray. The case became widely controversial because cannibalism isn't technically illegal in Germany, or a lot of other countries for that matter. And while Meiwes did technically kill Brandes, He had consent, so a lot of people didn't think that there was a crime here. The only motive for the murder was the cannibalism, but cannibalism wasn't illegal, and without a motive, they couldn't charge him with murder. The medical examiner testified that Brandes had been stabbed in the neck twice, and these particular cuts weren't thought to be part of the butchering process. Prosecutors argued that this proved Meiwes had malicious intent, and that he had killed Brandes in a way that he had not consented to. Meiwes seemed to be at peace during his trial and showed no remorse. He was completely convinced that he gave Brandes a nice, peaceful death that lived up to what he wanted. For the first time, there was a huge debate in Germany about cannibalism, questioning where the line should be drawn. When does it go from a necessity for survival to illegal? On May 9, 2006, Armin Meiwes was sentenced to life in prison, which in Germany is only a minimum of 15 years. He's spending his days in Castle Penitentiary, receiving therapy. He spends his time working in the laundry room of the prison and engaging in group activities like the church choir. What do you guys think of Armin Meiwes' life sentence? Do you think that he's where he should be, or do you think that there was no crime committed here because he had consent? Let me know down below how you feel about this one. I hope you all are having a killer day, and I'll see you down in the comments. Peace and love.